When you're standing in the shop aisle, staring at a row of subwoofers that all promise earth-shattering bass, it's easy to feel paralyzed. You know you need something that can keep up with the low-end demands of modern music, but you also worry about spending a fortune on a unit that won't match the rest of your system, or worse, that will force you to re-engineer your enclosure just to make it work. That hesitation is exactly what I wanted to clear up today, so you can walk away with a realistic sense of whether this particular sub actually belongs in your car and what you'll get for the money you're putting down. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Sundown Audio U10 V.2 D4 is a 10-inch subwoofer that advertises a hefty 4,000 watt peak rating and a solid 2,000 watt RMS handling. Those numbers can feel overwhelming, but the real question isn't how loud it can get, it's how consistently it can deliver deep, controlled bass in everyday driving conditions. To answer that, I dug into the design cues Sundown built into this model and compared them with the practical realities that come up when you actually install and use a sub in a daily driver or a weekend cruiser. First, let's talk about the dual voice coil (DVC) layout. The sub comes with two 4-ohm coils that can be wired either in series for an 8-ohm load or in parallel for a 2-ohm load. That flexibility is a real plus if you already have an amp that's locked into a certain impedance, or if you're planning a future upgrade. In my own shop, I've seen people buy a sub that forces them to swap out an already perfectly matched amp just to hit the right impedance. With the U10 you can stay with your current amp, whether it's a 2-ohm monster or an 8-ohm stable workhorse, and still stay within the manufacturer's recommended power range. The next practical element is the motor and cooling design. Sundown has equipped the U10 with a dual-cone aluminum voice coil that runs at 3 inches in diameter. The larger coil surface area helps disperse heat more effectively than a typical 2-inch coil, which translates into better thermal stability during those long highway passes where you might be riding the low end for minutes at a time. The sub also includes a motor that's specifically tuned for a smoother power curve, meaning you won't get that sudden spike in output that can cause distortion in the middle of a song. In real-world terms, the bass feels tighter and less wobbly when you crank the volume in a club-style playlist. Installation is where a lot of potential buyers get nervous. The package includes a clear set of wiring harnesses, a set of mounting hardware, and even a quick start guide that walks you through the recommended enclosure volumes for sealed and ported builds. The guidance isn't just a generic 12-inch box note. Sundown provides specific cubic foot ranges that align with the sub's excursion limits. If you follow those numbers, you'll avoid the dreaded over-travel scenario where the cone hits the box and you hear a harsh thump instead of clean bass. In practice, that means you can buy a ready-made enclosure that's already tuned to the U10's specs, or you can have a custom box built with confidence that the dimensions are spot on. Now, who should actually consider buying this sub? If you're already running a high-power amp, say a 1000 watt RMS unit at 2 ohms, and you want a sub that can handle the sustained output without breaking a sweat, the U10 fits the bill. It's also a good match for anyone who enjoys music genres that demand deep, punchy lows, hip-hop, EDM, modern rock, or any soundtrack that relies on that visceral thump. For a daily commuter who only occasionally turns the system up, you'll still appreciate the sub's ability to fill the cabin with a respectable amount of bass, but you might find the extra power capability a bit of an overkill. On the flip side, there are clear scenarios where you should walk away. If your car's interior is already cramped, fitting a 10-inch sub plus an appropriate enclosure can be a logistical nightmare. The U10 isn't a thin-profile unit, it needs a decent amount of space to accommodate the cone's travel and the cooling pathways. Also, if your budget caps at the lower end of the submarket, you might be better served by a 12-inch unit that offers similar RMS power but at a lower price point, simply because the larger diaphragm can move more air with less electrical input. Finally, if you're planning to run a modest 300 watt amp, the sub's power handling is simply beyond what you'll ever be able to drive, which could lead to underutilization and wasted dollars. In terms of strengths that show up day after day, the first thing most owners notice is the sub's ability to stay tight under heavy bass lines. When you play a track with a sustained low-frequency synth note, the U10 doesn't pump the cabin like cheaper subs that start to.